So as I said, I was just going to go through the how EPA says this is done. It's more important, I think, to have a lot of time for discussion about this thing. So that's where we are at this point. This is not questions, this is discussion. Ideas, what do you want to do with this? Yeah?
Well, I'm going to start with a question.
Okay.
You mentioned early potential drought situation, and I've heard from meteorologists that there's a possibility that we could be in for a 2 to 4 year drought in the Northeast. Is there a point where water resources in our watershed could become critical? Have we withdrawn to the point that we might have to ration?
I believe that's certainly possible because we don't have, other than the aquifer, we don't have a place to store water. Okay, and, you know, there's hydrogeologists out in the crowd that could probably tell you more about this, but the aquifer leaks. Water's leaving this aquifer continuously. It's not like a dam where you can hold all the water back. You can't. It just keeps going out. So the water's going to keep going out when there's no rain falling. So if we keep using water, it's the Edwards Aquifer all over again. We're using water and nothing's going back in. Eventually you end up with no water. Now, will there always be water available? Yeah, I mean, the aquifer is huge. As far as providing the needs of humans, I mean, we could keep sucking water out at 5-6 million gallons a day for a very long time and not completely deplete the aquifer. But what happens is that the level in the aquifer keeps dropping, and since the streams around here are all fed by springs, if you keep dropping the level, starting at the top end of the watershed, the water available for the streams keeps getting reduced as you go downstream. So, depends on your definition of severe, and if you're just looking at the humans, we're going to have enough, I think. That's my opinion. But the environment's going to get shortchanged.
Craig, you did a good job on explaining this, but when, based on my former life with the county and working with the center region and the other regions that make up the watershed, this is an enormously large undertaking. When I think of the staff it would take and the coordination it would take, I'm not too sure I can envision this actually happening.
Well, it would certainly happen a lot. It would be more likely to happen if we were in a drought situation. That's what's being felt in California and in Texas. They're under those drought conditions and they're having to go in and say, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? If we were in those conditions, I think that there would be a lot of push to do this in a hurry. So what needs to be done, I think, is we need to point to those examples from elsewhere, explain how those examples look like us, and they do. They look a lot like us, so that we can hopefully get people to understand that we should plan this in advance rather than waiting until it happens. So yeah, it is a major undertaking, and it's not going to be easy to get it to go watershed wide. It might be a thing where you look at saying, well, let's chunk it in pieces. Maybe there's a portion of the watershed that is willing to do it, and they go ahead and do their part, and then the other ones look at what they did and said, oh, well, that's not so bad. Let's just take what they did, copy it, change it to our stuff, and do it. But it does need to be done. Throwing our arms up and saying, I don't think it's ever going to get done, well, if we do that, it's never going to get done. I do think it's very important to do this.
One other comment related to something you said. Unless I misunderstood it, you used as an example quite a number of times that because of the plan, you're probably going to be discouraging new things that are going to be happening. And you use examples from maybe new business and industry, maybe wanting to move in, but because we're under water, we can discourage them. I can't see that philosophy prevailing here, particularly if the Chamber of Business and Industry is involved. That's contrary to their mission.
Well, if you look at the mission statement, I did point out at the beginning that the mission statement of the Watershed Association is what we're shooting for. And that looks at the economy, the quality of life, and the environment. So the economy is in there. The water conservation program is not about causing pain to people. It's about enabling people to do what they need to do. If you have a good water conservation plan, it should actually enable at least as much economic development as you already allocated. It should point out that, oh, wow, maybe we can manage even more economic development. You know, dollars that come in that don't necessarily impact the environment or the quality of life, well, are those such bad dollars? So, you know, I think that it shouldn't be looked at as, you know, I don't think the chamber is going to look at this and say, and they shouldn't look at it and say, well, this is detrimental to what we're trying to do. I mean, economic development is right in the plan. That's what you're doing this for, is to make it, and industries that want to come in and locate here, you know, some of those industries are already looking at this very thing. They're looking at these drought areas and saying, well, we don't want to go to a drought area. So they're starting to look at, okay, what's your drought management plan? Well, we don't have one. So I think that attracting in other entities will be easier if we can show them that we have a plan. That's what they're looking for. When industries are trying to look at a region, they want to see rate stability. They want to know what's going to happen long range. That's what they're looking for.
Can you envision who's going to take the leadership role in this watershed? Who do you envision?
Well, according to the Center Region Council of Governments, it's going to be the Chamber of Business and Industry. They were tasked with the idea, because the Chamber of Business and Industry brought the water conservation concept to the Council of Governments in the first place. So that's where we are right now. The Council of Governments, through the Public Services Environmental Committee, has said, great idea, head it up, make it happen. So that's where we are at this point. That doesn't mean that that's how it has to happen. That's just where we are right now. So that could change. A group could go back to the Council of Governments and say, maybe somebody else should be heading this up. Yeah.
Actually, I think it's a very good idea to get the chamber involved in this. One of the things I've noticed in looking at sustainable cities across the United States is that one of the features that distinguishes them is a very strong business partnership. And one of the things I look at in terms of companies relocating to an area, which is what CDICC is looking for, particularly those low environmental impact, millennial-driven type of companies, they're looking for two qualities in the community. And one is green and one is livable. So livability includes everything from how good your public schools are, your public transportation, down to access to natural environment and the desirability to live in a place. So for me, this makes very good sense.
Okay.
Cory, from a Penn State perspective, the Water Conservation Initiative fits nicely with the sustainability plan. It's also a component of your carbon reduction plan, because you use less water, there's less pumping energy consumed, you use less fossil fuel to make hot water that you need, in your facility. So we have a plan. Our plan isn't as formal as you went over. We have some pretty good results. In the last 12 years, we've reduced our annual water use by 25%. At the same time, we've added about 10,000 students and 4 million square feet to campus. And we have additional plans to lower that further. And then when we're done with the water, we take it out to spray fields and put it on the ground and recharge it back into the aquifer. It doesn't leave the aquifer. So we're trying to do our part.
And the reason why I have Penn State listed as being important component of this, one is you occupy a pretty big chunk of the watershed, and also you have a lot of really good examples that others can spin off of. So if Penn State is actively involved in this, they can point out and say, well, hey, come here and look at what we did in these buildings. This is what you should be doing. Think about things like this. So it's not necessarily the idea that water conservation needs to be imposed on Penn State. I probably didn't say that real clearly in the front end. You guys are doing a lot of good stuff. Looking more to get stuff shared from you to others, and getting water conservation. All those 10,000 new students are living out there somewhere. We need to get those 10,000 new students to also do water conservation where they're living.
So, as a sewer authority, I was wondering if you're seeing or might see an unintended consequence, because we're seeing higher maintenance in the sewer laterals because you got less water, you have more solid settling out. There's never any totally free lunch. There's always some ramifications. So I was wondering what you thought about that.
Well, we haven't seen any of the places where, and water conservation in our area tends to mostly be the newest buildings. We haven't had any issues with laterals clogging up in new facilities, and part of that is that we are requiring developers, as they build these new laterals, the inspection is much tighter to make sure that the grades are correct. We TV inspect all the lines to make sure there's no bellies in them and things. So by making sure that everything gets put in the ground correctly, we're not seeing that increase in maintenance because of lower flows. I'm probably, I don't know that we have any real evidence of it, but I would guess that in some of the cases where houses have been retrofitted without their laterals being repaired, there's probably some cases where those people have had to deal with sewage piling up in their lateral, and they've had to call Roto-Rooter. That's not us, that's their line. So we don't really have any information. You could probably get that from Roto-Rooter and the other plumbers around saying, have you seen a greater frequency since these plumbing fixtures have gone in? But as far as our mains go, we haven't seen that.
Cory, you mentioned increasing drought resistance. Could you give us some examples of things that would increase drought resistance?
Well, depends on the magnitude of the drought. There's a short-term drought and there's a long-term drought. A short-term drought can be addressed simply by having, if you wanted to, you could go through curtailment of water use. Generally, you're looking at preserving the water for the environment. That's really what you have to accomplish when there's a drought, is you're either running out of water for people or you're running out of water for the environment. Around here, it's going to be more of a running out of water for the environment. So you set targets for what are the minimum stream flows that you're going to accept in various locations in the watershed, and then you have to figure out how you're going to meet those stream flows. We don't have any place that we store water around here other than the aquifer. So how do you meet those minimum stream flows? Well, if we don't do anything, then that probably means we're going to say we're not going to suck as much water out of the ground during this time. There's other ways to do that. You can store water to release during low flow conditions to make sure that there's enough water there. Those can be a little bit costly. But we're a creative bunch around here. I'm sure we can find ways to make the flows stay what they need to be and still be able to not have draconian measures on people and say, well, we can't tell the golf courses never water your grass during a drought. That would pretty much eliminate, that would destroy the golf course. It's a little easier to tell homeowners don't water as often, but we don't have a whole lot of grass watering going on around here anyhow, even during a drought. Most people in this community don't water their lawns. So really, in my opinion, you're looking at finding a way to guarantee that the flows in the streams are there, and that's going to involve some kind of storage. Where you put that storage, your guess is as good as mine. Generally, storage you tend to put in the upper end of a watershed so that you can simply release it into the streams, but you can also get water from downstream and pump it upstream. Then you get into the sustainability of the pumping action, but you got to cost that all out with what's the value of the aquatic life that you're preserving by doing that. So it's a difficult, complicated question, but it all comes down to having enough water for the environment. That's really what you get into with drought management. That's what they're going through in the Edwards Aquifer case. The environmental groups down there are screaming their heads off about streams that are spring-fed drying up and basically becoming dry stream beds rather than being what they used to be, which was continuously flowing streams, kind of like Spring Creek. Even when we have hardly any water falling on us for long periods of time, Spring Creek still flows because we got springs. That's the same case with the Edwards Aquifer. They've now been out of water for so long and they're sucking water out of the ground so fast that streams are drying up. And take a look at that case and you'll see. So and they're doing the same thing. They're trying to figure out, okay, where are we going to store water? It's a challenge. Yeah, Larry.
Yeah, Cory, I'd be interested to see somebody really look at the 1960s here. I mean, we were all here, we were fairly well developed, and the 60s was a pretty darn significant drought. You know, what happened to the streams? We have gauge data. What happened to the wastewater treatment plants? There's got to be a bunch of historical information on that, and it should be part of this. I mean, that's immediate, already the scenario occurred once.
I think, looking at the history is a good thing, and fortunately we have an awful lot of data around here. That's one thing we are not short of is data. All the studies that have been done over the years by Penn State and others, and our group here, there's an awful lot of data on this watershed. So we should be able to draw some pictures of what this place looks like during drought. And if you take that 1960s case and add in all the people that have been added since then, you can figure out what that drought would look like now. And I think that would be a scary picture. It's a good possibility. Yeah.
I'd like to, I guess, take issue with Bill's statement that it's the logical thing is to have business owners leading the charge, to use your term. The chamber has a very definite goal in mind. I suspect that they would like to see economic development keep going, perhaps indefinitely. But I don't think that viewpoint represents all the people who live in the Spring Creek Watershed. So my particular point is that before we go further with developing a committee, we ought to decide whether the business and industry group is the group that should lead the charge.
If that is what you believe, then you should go to the Public Services Environmental Committee and COG and convince them to change that, because that's the direction they have already selected. So.
But I was actually addressing my remarks to people here who are members of the association. Perhaps if they did not agree with the selection of the business industry as a lead group, then they could take a position with this regional committee that you have. And by the way, what's come out of the center region so far has not really included what the downstream municipalities thought of the rest of the county planning commission.
And I think that's pretty common around here is the center region tends to get into it sooner, and the downstream communities tend to jump on board later because they're downstream. The upstream people do, and then the downstream people do. It's been historically the way things have gone around here.
Of course, but that's what needs to be done, is to get some support from the downstream.
Well, it is the chamber for Center County, so it does have interest in the entire county, not just in the center region.
I think that was part of the recognition that the center region folks realized, is that if this is going to be a watershed thing, it really ought to be run by somebody that's beyond just the center region. So we certainly have other entities that are out there. I mean, this group is a watershed entity. The Watershed Commission is a watershed entity. But it needs to be led by somebody who has reach in the entire watershed. The county is another one that could do it. I don't know that it's really as important to determine who leads it as it is to just get it moving. It's a collaborative thing. I don't think anybody really controls it. Generally, it gets it's kind of like an Act 537 sewage facilities plan. The people who put in the most cash tend to be the ones who end up putting the most effort into it, and it looks like they're the ones that are controlling the show. But it's just because they have, generally when you put a lot of cash in, you tend to have a lot of interest in the outcome. Bring your money to the table, and you'll probably spend a lot more time looking at it.
Well, it does sort of beg the question, why is the Chamber of Commerce getting it and the Spring Creek Watershed Commission not being the lead in this?
Because it was and it can change. The history of it was that the Chamber of Business and Industry brought this forward to the Council of Governments back in 2005. And it wasn't the Watershed Association. What were we at that? Were we Watershed Association at that time? Anyhow, it wasn't them that came and said there needs to be a water conservation plan. They submitted a support letter to the Chamber of Business and Industry, but it was the Chamber of Business and Industry that brought that forward to the Center Region Council of Governments. So that's, I think, why the Center Region Council of Governments said, great idea, if you care about it, go ahead and do it. And that was in 2005, and it's now 2015. So obviously not a whole lot has been done in the past 10 years, but there has been movement now. So if you want somebody else to lead it, somebody else needs to jump up and say, hey, we'll do this. I don't know that the chamber would be really upset about that. I think, frankly, they'd be happy if somebody else took over, and if the Council of Government said, yeah, let them do it instead. I think they'd be okay with that. Yeah.
From my perspective, being in the downstream community, I think the only way you're going to get the whole thing off the ground is you got to get the players to the table. Let the players decide who's going to chair, because that's all you're looking.
Mm-hmm.
We're sitting here discussing the coordinator. You need the players in the first place, or you have no need for a coordinator.
Right. Yeah, that's, in the discussion I had with the Chamber of Business and Industry, that's kind of what we came up with, was let's just contact all these entities that we can think of and get them to come in and talk about this and figure out what the organization is going to be and figure out who else needs to come to the table, who else should be invited. We made a list. I don't know if that list encompasses everybody that should be there. We probably missed some folks. Yeah.
What new ideas for reuse of water, such as already existing with Slap Cabin, what new ideas are being thought about for reuse of water in our watershed?
Well, Phase 3 of the beneficial reuse project indicates that we should push water even higher up in the watershed. So that's still part of the plan, is moving water higher up in Slap Cabin Run. Also looking for more industrial reuse, because if an industry is reusing the water, then they're not taking it out of the ground. So we're as was pointed out by Rob, we're eliminating that pumping cost, because we're not having to pump it all the way to the top end of the watershed, so that reduces the carbon footprint. So if an industry is using it in the Dale Summit Industrial Park, that's better than pumping it out of the ground, treating the water for them to use, and then putting it through our treatment plant, and then putting it back into the aquifer. So that's part of it, is looking at more industrial use. Unfortunately, we haven't been real successful because of the economy at attracting new businesses to come in here to use this water. Hopefully now that the economy is turning around some, we'll get more of that. Some other things we're looking at, we did what I consider to be a pilot project. The College Township building is using our water for heating and cooling, as is the Red Line car wash. Our water can be used for heating and cooling, and it reduces the energy because we're pumping the water anyhow, going through the building doesn't really cost that much. So that is an opportunity for using the water, not really using the water, but using the heat value of the water. It's a pretty efficient operation. We're always open to new ideas. Those are the things that are out there right now. We haven't come up with anything really earth-shattering beyond that, looking at different places to reuse it. The Kissinger Meadow project, I think you probably have seen, it's online now. There's water floating out there, and in the spring, hopefully everything will grow. We're looking to do more of that higher up in the watershed, would be the plan.
So there is water going into the slab cabin now?
Yes, there's 2 stream augmentation points. They're like little waterfall type things that come out. One's right off the parking lot from the hotel, and the other one's further down, closer to the bridge. And water comes out of those and goes into Slab Cabin Run. And then there's a bunch of constructed wetland areas that also receive water. We're not putting water into the constructed wetlands right now because we got things seeded pretty late, and so nothing's there to grow at this point, so we're going to fire that up in the spring. So hopefully by the end of summer, everything will be growing and look really nice there.
And by the way, they want it to be called the Gordon D. Kissinger.
The what?
Gordon D. Kissinger. It's Kissinger's want it named after the father.
Okay. Well, when the permanent sign, we just have a temporary sign there now, so when the permanent signs get built, we can certainly do that. So, no problem. Is that something from the College Township Park folks?
Yes, it is.
Okay, that's what we need, is something from them telling us what to put on the sign. So.
Right, one of the sons was concerned that the family really wanted it named after the father, not the Kissinger,
No problem.
Everybody.
It's College Township's land, so whatever College Township tells us to name it, that's what it shall be named. Yeah.
Question kind of directed towards Autumn. Has Center Region Planning Agency had any discussions about this and anticipating how they may be involved in the relation to the comprehensive plan?
I was trying to figure out how to formulate a question. Didn't let it slip that this was the first time I was hearing about this. So yes, it's the first time I've heard about this. I was a little bit taken aback by the chamber being in the lead, but I kind of get that aspect of it. And what I was kind of processing in my head, because of the 10-year gap, and because I haven't been in contact with the chamber to know where they are, is to invite, if I could get them invited back to the Public Service Environmental Committee just for a progress report. Because I feel like, and I don't know, I can't speak for Jim, the planning director, and what our staff capacity is, but it seems like a no-brainer that at least the planning agency would want to be at the table too. But like I said, I'm kind of concerned that I haven't heard about this before. So I'm just thinking, okay, talk to Public Service Environmental Committee, get the chamber back and report out and see what kind of resources we can offer, if any.
I think particularly you would have some good, you would have some good skills if COG would sort of allow that to play forward.
Yeah, it seems like a little kickstart would be. I mean, to me, this is great information, and I'm fully in support of it. But yeah, I think there needs to be a little oomph.
Oomph would be good. 10 years has been a long time.
Cory, what are they? You say it started in 2005. What's the current initiative pushing it right now?
The chamber in the last year, in their kind of normal cycle, they come back to UAJ and push for volumetric billing. And we remind them that volumetric bill, and they push for that as a water conservation plan, and we then remind them that water conservation is a lot more than just rates, and if they really want to do water conservation, then this is how you do it. If all you want to talk about is volumetric billing, then that's not really water conservation, that's simply talking about reallocating the money, so to speak. They've realized that they're not going to get the reallocate the money option done, so they have to get, their real goal is they want, or at least one person in there wants volumetric billing for UAJ really, really bad. And they're realizing that the only way they're going to get volumetric billing is to go through water conservation planning.
That's really interesting.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Judy, I think Cory has raised a really important issue. Intuitively, it would be great to have a workable water conservation plan for the watershed. And I think that it would be a good topic for this group, the association, to talk about, and then maybe take a position. Maybe send some people to the committee that COG has to represent our view, to take a position and take it to the Watershed Commission. But we, this group, can't arrive at a position today. So my suggestion really is that it be placed on a future agenda.
Was that a motion?
I'm making the glorious
Cory,
Yeah.
if we were to approach the chamber, do they have a key person who's taking the lead for them?
The meeting that I had was with Tom Songer and Vern Squire. So there's your answer.
put names to that. Get a few faces on there. Are we going to ask their questions? Are we done here?
Okay.
Cory, thank you.
You're welcome. If you want to get familiar with the EPA Guides Manual, it is online. All you have to do is search for EPA Water Conservation Plan Guidance Manual, and you'll find it. It's really easy to get to. I suggest all of you look at that. If you're really interested in that, there's a lot more detail in it than what I did here. They have lots and lots of templates that you can use, fill in the blank kind of stuff. Take a look at it. It's worth the 700-page read. Thanks.
Thank you, Cory. Bob, you got your hand up?
Judy, that was a motion.